Hello and welcome to Think Watercolour. Today I'm going to be painting a preparatory sketch using the back of a ruined painting in preparation for a more finished watercolour. This is a great way to reuse your watercolour paper if you've either messed up a painting or maybe you're not happy with the finished work that you've done. This is an 11" by 8" painting that I wasn't happy with, so I cut it in half to make two smaller pieces, roughly 8 inches by 5.5, for practicing on. It's Saunders Waterford 300-gram rough paper, and like most quality watercolour papers, it's sized on both sides, so using the reverse of the paper is fine. The only noticeable difference that I've found is that there's slightly less texture on the back of the paper. And because it's basically a scrap piece of paper, there's no feeling of anxiety about wasting quality paper on a practice sketch. So whether you're a beginner or an intermediate painter, I really thoroughly recommend this idea. This is a photograph I took of the harbour at Newquay in Cornwall at low tide. It's around 11:30 in the morning I took it, I think. And I'm going to paint it in a loose impressionistic style. And a simple trick for simplifying a complex scene is to look at it with half-closed eyes, squinting if you like, to see the shapes and tones rather than all the details. As I said at the beginning, this is a preparatory sketch, and they're an ideal way to test your choice of colours, composition and values. And I heartily recommend the idea for beginners to gain confidence in their work. So let's get started. As you can see, I've very loosely indicated the position of the boats and the harbour wall with very little detail at all, keeping it nice and vague and loose. I'm starting with the sky, and this is a mixture of cerulean blue with a touch of cobalt, keeping it darker at the top and then adding some clean water towards the horizon line. And I'm just mixing up some raw sienna for the beach, fairly light mix. This is just the initial background wash. And for the sea it's just cerulean blue. Again, a fairly light wash. I may need to darken that a bit later, but let's see how it turns out. Just adding a few extra streaks of darker washes in the sand. For the sky, I've just got a piece of tissue and I'm just lifting out some streaks of cloud in the sky. For the harbour wall, I've mixed up a mixture of ultramarine and burnt sienna to create this quite dark grey. I'm not going to paint too many washes on this painting. It's very impressionistic, so just keeping it fairly dark. It's silhouetted against the sky anyway, so that's the idea. And I'm just dropping in some more ultramarine wet in wet. Let it all blend together. It will dry much lighter than this, but it's going to be dark enough for my requirements for this painting. While that's still wet, I'm just going to get a palette knife and just scrape up an indication of some posts and masts and bits and pieces on the skyline of the harbour wall. And whilst I've let that dry, I've just lifted out with a damp brush just some highlights on the harbour wall. And for the boats, I'm just using the same mix of blue that I'd already mixed earlier, just adding a little bit more of the ultramarine in places and cerulean blue and cobalt for some of the lighter shades of the boats. Again, it's an impression of what's there, just putting in some variety and no detail really. If you labour too much over detail, you'll end up with a very stiff image. Just dropping in some darker tints here and there, just to indicate some shadows. And for the bottom of the boats, I'm using burnt sienna with a touch of ultramarine. More burnt sienna than ultramarine, just to darken it a little bit. Not too worried about where the hulls meet the sand, because I'm going to put a wet in wet shadow there. Again, not being too precise. I know I keep saying it, but it just is an impression of what's there. For the shadows, I've just added a little bit more of that blue mix to the brown of the hulls to create the shadows, letting it all blend in wet in wet. Keeping things loose, not getting bogged down with any detail. Just darkening the shadows in a few places there. Just using a rigger to indicate the shadows cast by the ropes that are lying on the sand. And on the shaded side of the cabins of the boats, I'm just darkening that because it's so the sun is fairly high in the sky, but there is some shadow on that side. And for the windows on the cabin, I'm just using some cerulean blue just to reflect the sky. Apart from this cabin, which is leaning forward, so it's not reflecting the sky, it's just a sort of grey there. Just indicating the windows on the side with some ultramarine. Just using a rigger with some white gouache to add lines of detail, just a hint of what's there, rather than slavishly putting every little detail in. Well, as long as you suggest what's there, the viewer's eye will do the rest. Just indicating a few bits and pieces on the cabins, masts and radar, sonar, whatever. I'm just using some cadmium red here just to indicate some buoys and life belts on the roofs of the cabins, and there's one in the sand as well. And that one in the sand helps to lead the eye across the painting as well, so it's compositionally it's quite a good idea. I'm just using some white gouache to indicate the ropes coming off the boats where they're reflecting a little bit of the sunlight. And this is just some neat neutral tint for the ropes lying in the sand. And the same, using a rigger with the neutral tint just to indicate some flotsam and jetsam on the sand there, and just putting a few darker patches of sand in with the raw sienna, slightly stronger mix. I'm just darkening that sea I mentioned earlier. I thought it would dry too light, so I'm just darkening the horizon and letting it all blend in. A few little bits of tidying up to do. I've just got to add the boat at the end, which I forgot to put in, and I think I'm done. I hope you found this video useful. Do give it a try. Do use the back of paintings that you've either messed up or you're not happy with. It's a great way to practice and mess around and just have some fun with watercolours. If you found this video useful, do give it a like. It really helps with YouTube. And if you're not a subscriber, do subscribe and hit the notification bell. As I've said many times, I do try and post once a week when I can. And thanks again for watching.